All right. All right. Hey, there we are. Back for yet another Monday. Monday, May 5th. So we missed the 4th, but in case you missed it, May the 4th be with you. Yeah, that's just a. All right. I'll try not to do any dad jokes today. I'm sorry. Um, but
Those
welcome to
those of
the.
us that don't watch all those movies and video games, half the time we don't know what you're talking about. But maybe
Yeah.
everybody else is in the know.
Well, I have, because of that very reason, I actually have a very special surprise prepared for you at the convention for FPEA. But you might, you might have to be there to get it. We'll take some video, but it'll be fun. Yeah. All right. So, welcome to the HEF podcast. This is the podcast of the Home Education Foundation, HEF, as it's lovingly called by many people and not so lovingly called by others. Is the Home Education Foundation. It's an organization started by Brenda Dickinson back in 1992. And Brenda has a long-standing history of working for rights for home education families. And we're going to dive into some of that today. But that goes all the way back to the 1980s. So HEF didn't start until 1992. And we're very thankful that Brenda had the heart and the vision for all of that work, and the tenacity for 40 years of it. And that's why we're here. And that's why we do the podcast. I like to try to keep history alive. I think that if we don't spend time talking about what our roots are, where we came from and where we're going, we tend to lose course. And so I don't want to lose course. I want us to be able to know where we came from and where we're going, and what all that means. So that's the purpose of the HEF podcast. And before we dive in, we're going to thank our sponsors as we do. Thank you to all of our top sponsors and our title sponsors. Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group. We are very, very thankful. If you can see at the top of the screen, you can support us at flhef.org/support, as many of our families across Florida do. It would be nice to see more of that support from the families. We love our top sponsors, but it's wonderful. I saw a notification come in just over the weekend of a new family that joined us. Brenda's recognition announcement and some other things happened, and it's warm. It feels very warm to know that you see us and the work that we're putting in, and you value it. We don't charge anything for our service or the work that we do. We simply do the work because it needs to be done. So we're always very thankful for the support when it does come in. All right, let's move into things. Oops, that's not supposed to be up there. Let's go there. There we go. I'm showing the man behind the curtain here. Good day, Brenda. How are
Good
you?
day. Good Monday.
Good Monday.
Boy, this whole year has just flown by. We're already in May, and we have been working diligently since January
Oh
on
yeah.
all of these things that we're seeing some of the fruits of our labor.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to throw in here regarding the support, because I know what it takes to run this organization. Many people don't, but it literally is a full-time job, because when we're not in the Capitol lobbying or online lobbying or reading bills and trying to catch amendments and making sure the wording is exactly the way we want it, and notifying all the people in the Capitol, attending committee meetings, we are answering parent questions. And I'm so thankful for Jason, who's carrying the load of the legislation, as well as some of the parent answers and working with the districts. But I'm also very grateful for Crystal, because she's taken on a huge amount of the work by responding to parents who call us on the PEP, who call us for home education questions. And we get a lot of questions. Somebody is answering those questions, and generally that's Crystal. And so we are so grateful for Jason and Crystal to take over the work that I've been doing for years, but the PEP added a whole new level to the work that we're doing here. And we're not hired by Step Up for Students, although we probably should be. Crystal is working with almost constantly trying to resolve the problems that parents can't do by themselves with Step Up. And we know Step Up is not running smoothly. One of the legislators' wives, after the session last Thursday, said,
Yeah.
how long does it take for us to get reimbursed? It's like a full-time job to get reimbursed. And I said, yeah, unfortunately, they don't have things running as smoothly as we'd like. And so Crystal's there to help when needed. And one of the legislators said, how long does it take to get something pre-approved? So even the legislators are having the same problem that many of the parents are having. And who do you go to? Step Up's administering it, but sometimes the process is so buried in the details that it takes somebody like Crystal or Jason calling a high-level person at Step Up and trying to get those things worked out. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the work you're doing. I'm thanking you on behalf of all the parents, but I'm thanking you for me too, because it's a job that requires more than one person to take care of. And that's one reason that parents really, really need to support the Home Education Foundation and Connect, because we want Jason to be full-time with us and not have to split his time when he's not working on home education issues, parent issues, to not have to do another job to support himself. We're at a point now in our history that there are so many home education families out there. And if you donated $10 for each child that you have, it would be amazing. We have 154,000 at last count of home educators, not even including PEP parents. $10 per child would give us more than enough money to hire some people to help run all of the things that Jason is creating for our community. So I just felt like I needed to say that, because I know how much work goes into what y'all are doing, and I really do appreciate it.
Well, I know how much work you've been putting in for the last 40 years, and I can concur. It is a lot of work, and it is work that deserves full-time attention. I will say that there are times where maybe my children bear the brunt of my frustrations because I get overwhelmed. There's a ton of cases and a ton of information, and despite how much information that we put out there, it seems to not always be accessed. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, well, where's the gap in that? Do we need to do a better job of cataloging it or getting it out there so that parents can know and find those answers? Because if you can imagine when we field all the calls that we field, and there's just us. It's just us. We don't have like a phone switchboard or anything like that. Then we're also trying to manage there were 70 education bills at the beginning of this session, and there are still like 15, I think, that are alive. Not the education bills, but other bills. So the budget is still being. We'll get into all that. There's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot that's going on. Then I also have a full-time job, so I'm not trying to lobby for myself to be paid more, but there is the need for full attention to be able to be given to something the way that Brenda has been able to do for all those many years. And we want to make sure that that work keeps going. And I have a vision for expanding the options and opportunities and ways of communicating and being able to be involved as a community across Florida. And parents who, I know Katie will be interested in this. Katie, I see you in the comments. Having an opportunity to play a role in your area, as community leaders, the Discord that we're building will provide that. It'll also give us an opportunity for home education students. My hope is that in the future, As that community grows, there are mentorships and apprenticeships and valid work opportunities that emerge where people say, hey, we want some good people who are flexible, knowledgeable, ethical, and not afraid of hard work to be able to find. And I'll say, hey, we've got a community that's exactly that. You should come talk to them and have an online space where they can actually communicate and talk to each other and interact and say, hey, yeah, why don't you come try this and come try that and coordinate those things. And so it's a big lift, and there's a lot of moving parts, but I think it's the bridge between rights and opportunities kind of coming together to put our children up for success in life. And that's really the point of education as a whole, right? Is to help our children be more successful. And that's the idea, just create an optimal mind, a mind that's capable of doing more and succeeding, even in our absence, or especially in our absence, as we pass the torch of their lives over to them and let them walk. Well, speaking of passing the torch, Brenda, I'm going to monologue like a Disney villain for a moment because, well, take the mic as the speaker recognizes me, and that's myself. I know that you do not toot your own horn, and I know that for the longest time, you have been without what I would think is proper support, and there have been a number of champions in your pocket and in your field who have been behind you, and I appreciate them fully. So this is also, I suppose, a recognition for them. And I didn't know that this moment would happen the way that I wanted it to. I was praying about it. I actually approached one of the senators at the beginning of before session began. I approached the senator and I said, I would like to do something for Brenda. It is a very special year. It's her 40th year, and this is the year that she is announcing her official retirement. And I would like for her to go out, one, with let's fix the sports issue. Let's see if the Craig Dickinson Act could not be clarified and resolved. And I was hopeful, but that has been my heart this entire time, is to fight for that bill tooth and nail. And the other thing is, I said, can we do something and recognize her? And he said, I'll have to check into that. And as we got further and further into session and I see the recognition moments going to the staff and to the interns and all of that, I just kind of thought, it's really cool. They've achieved a lot in their studies and in their college. And celebrating someone's potential is important. But when someone has a 40-year legacy of results and work and sacrifice, it deserves a special place of honor. So I spoke with the senator and planted that seed, and ultimately he jumped at the chance to show her some recognition and some love and to dote on her. So it was actually near the end of session this year. If you missed it, we posted it online, but I'm going to go ahead and play it again because I think that it's so powerful. But Senator Clay Yarborough out of Jacksonville, Duval County, stood up and gave her a moment, and I'm going to play it here so everybody can see it, and I want to talk about it just briefly. But
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our other recognition, and also in the West Gallery, for decades, Brenda Dickinson has been a voice for parents at the Capitol. She is now retiring after 40 years of sacrifice and service. Brenda sat at the table with Representative Daniel Webster and her husband, Craig Dickinson, and helped draft the original statute 1006.15 in our education code that is named the Craig Dickinson Act after her husband. Brenda's involvement has helped bring homeschooling from an unknown to a common day choice. She has also worked on policies related to dual enrollment, Bright Futures, Florida Virtual School, state college admissions, the Gardner Scholarship, PEP, and transfer of credits, and also served on a 2000 committee to rewrite the school code. She has sacrificed much time and resources and is now retiring after 40 years. Brenda is an inspiration, an incredible person, and I hope you'll join me in thanking her.
So I didn't notice. It's over. I know that you can't see it on the screen, so I'm just letting you know it's finished playing. There's some things that I didn't notice because I was looking at you the whole time, and it's kind of taking that moment in. And I wanted to stand and clap for you, but I couldn't see the senators at the bottom underneath, and I didn't see them all stand. So I thought it was weird for me to stand and be the only one standing, and here I'm the only one sitting. So I think I love that they stood for you as they're moving to get up. Everybody moves, and I think that something that's often missed is that, or that could be missed, is that very beginning moment when he says that you had devoted 40 years. I heard everyone go ooh in the background, and I've listened to it over and over, and I love it, and I'm so thankful that you were able to have your moment. I was nudging you to stand up. This is, you guys don't know this, right? So y'all don't see this stuff happen, but Brenda will not toot her own horn, and she does not like the spotlight, and it is that's not lost on me. The humility and the heart for service isn't lost on me. So I want to share with you the behind the scenes piece. While he's talking, she's sitting for the most part, and I've had to nudge her maybe three or four times. I'm like, Brenda, stand up. They're talking about you.
It's true. I was sitting in front of them, and I could hear him going, Brenda, stand up.
Yeah, Brenda, stand up. And eventually she goes, well, all right, and she stands up. And if you notice at the beginning of it, Chef Jones down here at the bottom, he's early on in it. He's looking around like, where is this person? Where is this person? And eventually Brenda stands up, and they can see her because the balcony, there's a line of sight thing that comes into play. And I'm just thankful. I'm very thankful for you and the 40 years. And this moment has been, it has been on my mind. And I woke up yesterday with, I don't know, it was like 5 a.m. And I just had, I don't want to call it an epiphany. I had a very, very strong urging. Something was nudging me to think deeply. And the question about what really is home education, like what is it you've been fighting for all of these years? That question was just boring its way through my mind. And so I laid there for maybe an hour, just thinking and contemplating before I was able to get up. And I think that it's really important. It's really important for me to wrestle with that and understand what you've been fighting for all of these years. And home education, as I hear people talk about the right to do this and what they're teaching in public schools and various different aspects of like why we want to be, why we want to do home education, or why we choose homeschooling so that we can pick the curriculum and we can do this and our kids don't have to be taught that. And I think there's a lot of focus on the right that we have to choose the information that's poured into our kids' minds. But I think the right to home educate is deeper than that. I think that's a part of it. I want to say that out loud. I think that's a part of it, but I think it's so much deeper than that. I think that it's about recapturing life itself. See, money can be earned and spent and saved and invested and lost and regained. But time is the one thing in life that no matter how it's handled, invested, or spent, it's just lost. It's only spent. And it can be lost well, but it simply runs out and there's never more added. We have what we have, and it depletes as we go. It passes and it stops for no person. No person is outside of this. It respects no one. And so it shows no favorites. It just passes. And we can capture moments. We can trade our time at the very best for moments and memories. And home education at its core is that. It's reclaiming our time back from the institutions or the societal norms or the given norms that would suck it away from us and take our children and put them in different entities and hand them off to others and then get them back at the end of a day, only to find out how their day was. And it allows us to recapture all of those moments. So I want to share with you a couple of things. I remember sitting on the steps in our old town home at the top of the steps when Aerith was crying and she was just having a hard day. And I don't know why. Maybe that's a girl thing. I don't know. But I do know that I was there. I worked from home and they were homeschooled and I was there and I just sat. I put my work down and I sat at the top of the steps and I put my arm around her and I just let her cry and I asked her questions to understand. And that moment is bonding and formative. And I can encourage her to, okay, cool, we've cried enough. Let's get back to work. And there were things that came from that. I remember taking a lunch break because my kids would beg me to go to the pool. They were so excited. They wanted to go to the pool. And then they get to the pool and swimming is difficult and challenging. So we had these mantras that we came up with where we don't give up. We see things through to the end. And going and having fun at the pool became a way of mastering oneself and challenges when they get difficult. And I remember beating my kids at games on purpose and then showing them that they could have beat me if they were just reading the screen or the board, because the board, it told them what to do. And since then, they've become avid readers, like masterful readers. They love reading, and that's beautiful because I grew up hating reading. I was punished with reading when I would do something wrong and be put in timeout or something like that. And it was like, go read Smokey the Bear because you're not supposed to play with matches and different things like that. And I hate reading to this very day. And I remember scraped knees and I remember neighborhood bullies and having conversations with our kids about how to handle things like that. And I was there, they were there. And the beauty of it all is that there's no bell that dings and tells me I've got to put my quiet finger up and be somewhere else. There's no rush from one place to the other with only 5 minutes in between this or that place to be to stop. There's no shift in the hour to hour unyielding schedule of curriculum. We have permission, freedom to pause and stop and talk, to change priorities and shift focus at a moment's notice. We can start the hour talking about math and end it talking about character because math is not as important as character today because of what happened. And we can pivot. We have the freedom to decide more than just choosing the information our kids are taught. We have the freedom to recapture those moments back. And that's something that your work over the last 40 years has carved out those rights. And I look forward to carrying that torch forward. And I think I deeply, truly deeply understand and value what it is you've poured yourself into for the last 40 years. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Say something because I don't want to.
Well, it's always been about families and how parents can maintain control in the education process, but more so, as you said, in the time. And let me just give one historic example is my child couldn't play sports because the FHSAA had passed a bylaw that said no home educated students can participate at any of our public or private schools. So he wanted to play sports really bad. My option was to put him in the sports at a public or private school, which meant I was giving up home education, or I could fight. And it wasn't until his senior year that he was able to play, because it took a while to get a law passed with all the opposition in the House and Senate. But it was about not having to give up home education for my child to be able to do what other kids could do in a public or private school. And then that same year, we were seeing a huge drop off. Home education was growing until 8th grade. And then at 9th grade, our numbers dropped like a cliff, like they had fallen off of a cliff. And parents were afraid to keep their children home through high school. So I had the opportunity to work to create a public school that offered classes for those parents at home. and thus was born the Florida Virtual School. So I love it because if a parent's afraid to teach math, you don't have to give up home education. You just get a class somewhere. Now, there's a lot more opportunities today, but back then, things were so tight and so regulated that we didn't have the school choices that we have today. And so it was about keeping these kids at home so that they could take the 1 or 2 classes that the parents were afraid to teach, and keeping them home through high school. So there were a lot of battles, but it's always been about family and keeping the family together with strong bonds among the members.
Yeah. And that's so key. It is so important to success in life. This is where I think the public school system just can't accomplish what a strong family can accomplish in terms of those bonds and that confidence and the character and establishing that up. And I think we still need strong public schools. I don't think that there's any reason why we would want weak ones for the general public who does lean on them and access them and leverage them. I don't think that there's a reason to make an enemy out of public school or anything to that effect. But I value what you've done to carve out the freedoms to take those moments back for families and to invest in our children fully with ourselves. There are trends even among the homeschool community of homeschooling and microschooling and all kinds of things. And it's the same kind of handoff moment where I take my kids and I hand them to someone else. And we don't have to do that. That's an option, just like public school is an option or private school is an option. It's great. But home education as an option is truly the parent educator standing up and being the one to pour in. I know how to read. Let me teach my kid to read. I know how to think. Let me teach my kid to think. I know how to do this. Let me teach my kid to. I don't know how to do that. So let me find somebody who can help teach them that if that's what they're interested in, and keep rolling. But it's free and it's flexible and it's beautiful. And so thank you. Thank you for all your time that you've put into that. I really appreciate that.
I want to share one more personal thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think it fits in really well here.
Mm-hmm.
Is we didn't give the authority over our children to anyone else. We maintain the authority, and instead of saying, well, my teacher told me, you are the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you see is when we set kids up in grade levels, you see, even in Christian schools, the older kids don't value the younger kids. There's an attitude of we're not on the same level. And there's a lot of bickering that goes on as a result of that. And I see home education families, they respect all ages. They get along. Your family is a beautiful example of that. My kids were very close in age, and so we just pretty much did everything together. But yours are spread out, and the older kids help out the younger kids, and it's a family. It's not, I'm in the 6th grade and you're in the 2nd. You don't know as much as me, and blah blah blah. So we don't age grade out. We are all a unit, and I love it. And one of the things about authority that I wanted to share is, in order to be able to play sports, after Craig died in June, Mark struggled and struggled because the schools were not real receptive to homeschoolers back then. We're seeing the same thing now, but there was a period of time when they weren't this way. So, but anyway, in those years, it's like they did not want home education students. So when Mark decided he wanted to move to Orlando to be around some men in the family after Craig died, we tried to get him in a private school. And the school didn't accept seniors. So they wanted to interview him. And so one of the things that they wanted to know, would he take trigonometry again? And he said, I don't know. And they said, why don't you know? He said, well, I need to ask my mother if I can do that or not. And they were like, what? And so then they wanted to interview me. So when it came, they said, well, we're concerned Mark can't make his own decisions. And I looked at him and I said, no, you don't understand what's going on here. I've never given the authority over my child to anyone else. And he's respectful of my position as the authority. And they were literally blown away.
Yeah.
He got in as a senior.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
But
Things like that are mind blowing to people because there's such a different way, a different norm that we're kind of, as a cultural wave, kind of working against in some ways.
that's all my stories for now.
Okay. Okay. All right. I didn't know if there was more. Speaking of authority, and sports, I would like to maybe shift and transition into the bill that recently passed. This is a moment we could cheer for. Let's cue up the cheering crowd. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
It was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster.
It sure was. This whole session has been a roller coaster. This bill in particular has been a roller coaster. And the bill in question is Senate Bill 248. It was a bill sponsored and proposed by Senator Corey Simon. And it was initially in regards to private school students who are playing sports at an FHSAA member school that doesn't offer the sport that they want to play in. So like maybe they have basketball, which is a smaller team, but they can't field a football team, and the student wants to play football, and by current statutes, they're not allowed to do that. So the bill that was being proposed would actually allow that private school student to play at another school as long as their private school doesn't offer the sport. So it's a great bill. And because it was a bill on extracurriculars, there was not necessarily an appetite for starting another extracurricular bill, especially since the House has a cap on how many bills they can do. So the idea was to amend that bill and work with them to be able to amend that bill to also address some issues we were facing as a home education community. We did a deep dive on that last week. So if you have questions about that bill, we're not going to go in depth into that bill at this time. But if you have a question about it, that's episode 83. So if you're looking for information and a deep dive and you want to kind of figure out what was all in that bill and what the nuances of that issue are, please check out that episode 83. This bill, today we're going to talk about what happened to the bill. So we start to work with a different language. It finds an amendment, and then it has a delete all and replace that with something else that was not friendly to what we were looking at. But it was a misunderstanding of what they thought was friendly, and so they then removed that amendment and put the bill back in the other posture it was in, and then finally we're like, okay, this is the last committee, and so then it was sent to the House in messages, and it sat there for a bit, and then the House picks up the bill, and they go, hey, what a great bill. We're going to take this bill and set our bill down. Don't worry about our bill. Let's take the Senate bill and work it. This is great. And then they go, there's only one problem. There's stuff in this bill, so delete everything. They took the language from the House bill and put it right on top of the Senate bill and sent it back to the Senate with, lots of question marks floating above people's heads. Like, what is going on? There's a bit of a power match that's happening right now between the Senate and the House, and they don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And when that happens, they start to pick apart other things that they did see eye to eye on, and it becomes things they can negotiate and use and leverage just to take an opposite position, just to see if you like that thing enough to fight for it, and if you do, then give us this thing that we want over here. And so there's a whole political game that happens behind the scenes. So Corey Simon stood up in the Senate when the House's amendment came back, and he said some very harsh language. He said that the House had bastardized the bill and taken it, and he was very unhappy about what they had done with it. And man, you could see the FSU champion emerge as he spoke. I was literally like, my beard nearly came unglued while I was watching. I was like, what did he just say? It was epic. And he said, we move that the House recede from the bill. And they amended the bill back to its proper posture and sent it back to the House again. And this time in the House agreed to pass it as is. And so last week, at the end of the week, the bill has made it through. And here is the bill. Very briefly, going to comb down through the important parts of the bill, not in any like great detail, but just as a way of putting it out there. One of the things that it adds is a line. So this is after the existing statute right now, which is 1006.15 parens 3 parens C for home education students. They're adding another subsection to that paragraph, and it says an individual home education student is eligible to participate on an interscholastic athletic team at any public school in the district in which the student resides, provided the student meets the conditions specified in subparagraphs 1A through G. And so that's just the behavior, the academia, the different commitments that are already there in statute. It just creates another subparagraph, but very clearly spells out that they're able to play at any school. And what the effect of this is that when you go to try to play a sport at a public school, and the district tells you, oh, you can only play for your zone school. Oh, you can only play for your zone school. Oh, you can't play for that school. I know it's 10 minutes from your house, but your zone school is 40 minutes away, but you can only play for your zone school. We've been fighting issues like that all year, actually for quite a bit of time, especially since COVID. It seems to have become more popular battle, and we needed this spelled out with clarity, and Senator Simon took it and ran with it. He stood his grounds and he held the line. And so we have this language that's being sent to the governor to be enrolled and become a bill July 1st, or become a law July 1st. So it'll add that clarity and state very plainly and clearly, it won't have to necessarily be reasoned that you can play at any school in the district. So that clarifies this.
So I want to say, the way they did it is not the way that we suggested doing it, which was put it in the line of where the student could play. They took a paragraph, separated it out, and then said they can play at any school. It's not buried in what's already there. It's clearly a message to the districts that home education students have the right to play at any school.
Yeah, it's going to be hard
to like the way it was set out.
It's set there.
Yeah. Our suggestion was to add 3 little words that would have done something, but then it may have been not noticed that it was even added. They very clearly added a whole little subparagraph to go, here's the message, get it clear. And I appreciate that.
Yeah,
so how to follow this bill? It has now been enrolled, engrossed and enrolled, and filed as enrolled. And so it'll be sent to the governor. And when it's sent to the governor, he'll have 7 days. Normally, session would be over at this point, and he would have 15 days. But we're actually still in session because, believe it or not, if you weren't watching, session was voted to be extended to June 6th, I believe. And so we are technically still in session. This week is kind of a scramble week. It's a week where maybe you would call it a bye week in sports, where you're not necessarily playing any games. It's a bye week. Everybody's kind of reorganizing and getting things wrapped together. This is normally when we'd be taking vacations. So some of them might be taking vacations and having some much needed R&R. They do a lot of work. And then we'll be getting back into it. But to follow this bill, here is the flgov.com/EOG. And this is the Executive Office of the Governor, EOG, and currently Ron DeSantis. And so as you scroll, this is the web page, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see these yellow buttons here. You're going to see 2025 bill actions. This is where you want to watch. Just if you're curious and trying to follow it and see what's happening and what's going on, watch this. It'll be updated as they go, and they'll add the bills that have been enrolled to the governor and signed and their action dates. So you'll be able to kind of see the bills as they're dispositioned here. And then you'll see the disposition signed. So our bill will be on this list, and it will then also show disposition signed once it's signed. So if you're curious as to when and how and why, and you want to follow that yourself, that's the place to do it. Yeah.
And it goes into effect July 1.
Yes, it will. It will, if signed by the governor, go into effect July 1. So it's not that, oh, they talked about it on HEF podcast and that's the way it is now. It isn't yet now. The bill is now, but it won't be into effect until July 1st. And so come July 1st, if you have been trying to prepare to play a sport or do this or do that, there are ways to keep an eye on it and to move forward. As of right now, you're going to continue to hear the same rebuttals that you would normally hear. Once this goes into effect, it will change the game. We are currently working with the Department of Education on putting together a list of cases and issues. So if you have been getting that rebuttal or getting that pushback in your district, I would much appreciate if you would send us an email with your issue, what sport you were trying to play, who you talked to, what they had said, how and why you were denied. And what I'm doing is I'm putting together a list, and I will be handing that list over to them by the end of the week. I can add to it later, but I will give them a formal list by the end of the week, so that they can help start doing an investigation on which counties are doing what, and they can start to kind of follow up on making sure that as that bill passes and we get into alignment, that the districts get into proper posture with the statute. And so there's a likelihood that they will offer up a technical assistance paper. I can't commit them to the actions that they haven't committed to me. They have committed so far to investigate it and to look into it, and they're not happy about it. So there's that I can say and I can talk about. So if you would send us your info, if you are struggling with your district on playing a sport and you're being denied, you're being told that they can only play at a zone school, or that the school is at capacity and you can't play there, or that you have to do it only during the open enrollment window, or different things like that. Send us your issue, and what we're doing is we're compiling a list. I have a list existing already of a number of cases, but I imagine that there's a lot more. If there's one or two parents in a county, there's probably a lot more. And so if you're experiencing that, send it in and help us help you.
I dropped the email address for that in the
that.
comments, just so everyone who's listening knows. It is info@flhef.org, but it's also typed there in the comments. Can we hit a question related to sports?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Kanan says, I'm really curious about Florida Statute 1002.31 and open enrollment. I had to deal with this in 2018 when my homeschooled son wanted to play for a school that he wasn't zoned for. We enrolled him into an academy, open enrollment, and he went every single day for all 4 years and took 2 classes at the high school that he wanted to play for. My daughter wants to play volleyball at that same high school, but I don't want her taking any classes at that school. How can we get around that specified condition of open enrollment? So it's an interesting question, I thought.
So
that is what we just fixed in this bill. They don't have to use that statute number, because as Jason did an excellent job last week explaining how those statutes all work together, they should have been able to participate just as a home education student at any school you choose.
Without having classes there, right?
Yes, right. But because of that, that's why Jason went after so strongly including the word any school in the district. So they should not have to take any classes unless it's wrestling and there's weightlifting that goes along with it. Then you need to take the class. But, if it's after school golf or after school volleyball or whatever, you can choose after July 1st, you can choose any school in the district. So that's the problem that was existing. It shouldn't have ever existed, because that statute tied it to 1003 point, is it 03, that talks about capacity. So the capacity, as Jason explained last week, only related to core courses, and it specifically excluded extracurricular activities. But the districts were just trying to find a way to exclude homeschoolers. Now we have the full force of the legislature, and if necessary, the Department of Education, to clarify to the districts that you can choose any school without taking a class.
Yeah, and with this new bill and the way that it's worded, there's no lack of clarity that that's the case. It's broken out in its own paragraph and everything. So.
And so I would also like to point out that 1006, I'll put it up here. 1006.15 parens 3 and parens C has to do with the home education students who can play. Parens 4 goes back to all students, and it says the student standards for participation in interscholastic extracurricular activities must be applied beginning with the student's first semester of the 9th grade. Each student must meet such requirements for participation as established by the school board. However, a school board may not establish requirements for participation in interscholastic extracurricular activities which make participation in such activities less accessible to home education students than to other students. So this goes back to the issue with, oh, well, you'll have to take some classes. Oh, but you can't take some classes because the school's at capacity, so you can only play at your zone school. Right? So because it tiers. And so for them to be able to do that, they wouldn't be able to do that. So classes like conditioning or weightlifting and things like that that are core to the students' participation in the sport or are blended into it, I think are reasonable and not making that less accessible per se. So, but yeah, there's some very clear statutes there. Parens 4, I think that one's very helpful.
And can you state again, because he just asked in the comments what statute that is? I'm also typing it in the comments.
It's 1006.15. That entire statute is known as the Craig Dickinson Act, and that's the one Senator Yarborough was talking about in his recognition to Brenda, and it's one we've been fighting for this whole session, so I'm very glad to see that.
Philip and Valerie Hughes asked, does the language also include private schools cannot require a PEP or homeschool student to take classes at their school to participate in extracurriculars?
That's a great question. The answer to that, and Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer to that is no. The private schools are required to make an agreement with the student if they're going to allow the home education student to play for their school. And this is something that I heard a lot of the Democrats kind of talk about whenever they would speak up and go, well, how is this fair or how is that fair? Public schools are a function of the Public Education Initiative, and they're funded by the taxpayers as an open access to the public program. Private schools are not. Right? Private schools are privately funded. Private individuals or entities form their own organizations and come up with their own rules for participating, and that's how they manage, and they have authority over their enrollment and their obligations that they set for students and requirements for parents and all sorts of things. And so in 1006.153C, the home education student may develop an agreement, meaning it's optional and it's possible, but may develop an agreement to participate at a private school. So they're given permission to do that, but it is fully up to the private school to do that. I hope that answers the question. And I don't see any other questions. So
yeah, I don't see any others either.
There is a little bit of a delay, so if you have other questions or you have other comments, go ahead and toss them in there. So here's one. Let's see. In Lee County, the Lee Schools website says that you have to contact Mr. David LaRosa to be assigned a school to participate in interscholastic extracurricular activity. Do I just contact the school directly now? you may contact the school directly and seek to participate with them. You could have done that before. It's simply their way. There are things. So there are things in language and language use that the home education offices or the school districts will state, and because they're the authority over the public schools, they sound very authoritative. But the number one authority that regulates is the law, right? So the thing that they have to also obey is the law. So they can set certain requirements or criteria, but they can't actually set any requirements or criteria beyond what's spelled out in statute. And so it's not a requirement of eligibility that you contact David LaRosa. You're eligible to participate if you meet the eligibility requirements, and you can connect with that school and attempt to play. And then the district will probably weigh in and say, oh, you can't because that school's at capacity or this reason or that reason, like they've been doing. And that's the purpose of clarifying the statutes, to make it clear that you can play at any school in the district.
Yeah, they can't
And you
randomly.
don't have to go through open enrollment to do that.
That's correct.
Yeah, and they can't
Sorry, whoa,
assign
hold on.
you.
Brenda, you kind of cut off at the beginning of your statement, so I don't want that to get lost. Say that again.
You do not have to go through open enrollment in order to choose a school.
There you go. I wanted to make sure we weren't accidentally cross-talking over and not get the do not part. That's clear.
And I just wanted to re-emphasize the fact that the district doesn't assign you which school you're allowed to play at. That's not
correct.
how this works.
Right. That's correct. Yeah. They are eligible. So this is the bill that we're looking at language right now that will go into effect. And again, this isn't adding to the statute a new accessibility or opportunity. This is a clarifying statement, because the rebuttals that we were getting and the arguments that we were getting focused on a vague thing that took a reference of 6 different statutes to understand. So for clarity's sake and simplification, this has been put in there to clarify, not to give a new right or opportunity.
Yeah, and honestly, I think some of the legislators didn't understand that, because some of the debate over this amendment made it sound like this was somehow offering a new opportunity to home education students.
I don't like to play sides in the politics, because I think that at different moments, I think ideas need to stand on their own and not necessarily be, oh, a Republican idea or, oh, a Democrat idea. The idea is a good idea or a bad idea all on its own, regardless of who brings it up. But I have noticed that in a lot of the rebuttals offered by the Democrats who would speak up in both the Senate and the House, they would focus in, and their language would make it sound like, maybe for TV sound bites or something to that effect, make it sound like you're giving special treatment to these people. No, actually, it's literally already in statute. In fact, the private schools being able to play at other schools, the private school students being able to play at public schools, is also already in statute as well. It was not a new access granted. The FHSAA member schools, those students were the only private school students not allowed to play at another school if their private school didn't offer their sport. And so even that was to clarify and kind of fix a population of students that had been left out. And so they're looking at it going, oh, well, you're giving special treatment to them. Like, actually, no, we're equalizing the playing field and bringing them in line with everyone else who can choose to play at these schools. And so it was the way it's argued by them for their sound bites on the Florida Channel it's something that I don't like. And this is one of the reasons why we do the podcast, to kind of help break down some of these things and talk about them. But it's important, because it's important to know. But I hope that clarifies it. I don't have anything to add. Brenda?
I have one thing to add. I think it puts a greater responsibility on the parent to choose the right school, because there's another bylaw that says, and it's also a statute, that if a child is tried out for a sport at a school, they're not eligible to try out for the same sport at another school.
Mhm.
Therefore, consider carefully whether your outstanding student in a particular sport may not make the team. If
That's
so, you have limited his opportunity for that year to play the sport at another school.
That's
So
right.
so it works in reverse too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a student that's zoned for one school, which is a very, very good football school, if he goes to that school to participate, more than likely won't make the team.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to choose a team where he does have an opportunity to be selected and play on the team. So
Mhm.
I think that's an argument that you could use with a district. Now they're going to have to follow the law, but you
Mhm.
can smooth their feathers that say not every homeschool student will choose the best football school
right.
or
Yeah.
whatever the sport is, because maybe
Because
they
the
won't make
competition's
the team.
fierce. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And if they try out, that's counted as participation, and then they're ineligible to participate at any other school
Yeah.
right.
for that sport. For that
So
sport.
there's already a protection in place to prevent like school hopping, where you're like, I'm just going to
Right.
try out for this sport at all the different schools, you know?
Mhm. Well, Brenda, we have a call to be on, and we have to get on to that. We missed the last one, so we must be there for this one. So I'm going to wrap things up. Before we do that, is there anything else that we need to mention, discuss, or state?
Can I give just a quick kind of like housekeeping statement?
Yeah, please.
We are going to be transitioning away from the forum. So for those of you who have been searching like PEP information on the forum on our website for the past couple of years, our website provider is actually phasing out the forum feature. And so we're going to be moving all of that information into our blog and then into our Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to make that public statement. So if you start as of sometime in May, I think it's May 15th, where we will not be able to post new things in the forum because of them phasing it out.
Yep.
So if you're looking for information, and I need to go through all those posts anyway, because a lot of them are outdated with like
Yep.
all the changes that have happened. So you're going to start seeing forum posts just kind of disappear and blip away.
No, you
eventually.
won't. No, you won't. No.
Well,
we're going to leave them. We're going to leave them up.
Well, they will eventually be taken
Eventually,
down.
So September, they're going to discontinue the forum.
So I just wanted to make the announcement, though, that we're going to be updating any post that is outdated and no longer relevant might just disappear between now and September.
What we will be doing is we'll be moving the relevant information.
It's going to all get moved
to our Discord server, and we have areas in the server for 2023, 2024, 2025. So the history of those will be preserved, and the Discord server will act as the new forum, and we'll be putting a post up to direct everybody to the Discord so that you'll have access.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to be confused if you see stuff getting moved around in the forum, or you see us putting updates on posts that's directing you somewhere else. And some of that stuff that we want to be more publicly viewable is going to get copied to the blog. So,
that's correct.
Yes. I just wanted to kind of let everybody know what's going on so that you aren't like, what's happening to the forum? Why are there no new posts going up? That's going to be the reason why. So.
That's correct. That's our big, hairy, audacious goal for this week. And we hope to have the Discord server live by the end of next week. So keep a lookout for that as these transitions come through. And thank you for that announcement, Crystal. You're absolutely correct. And Brenda, is there anything else before we go?
Oh, we got to go.
We got to go. All right. You heard it. You guys have a wonderful Monday. And we'll see y'all next week. And we're out.